It's May 20th, 2020. We're here at Rodeo Studios at the Rose Garden. And my name is Karen Sinanutauri. I'm your president this year, and I'm going to ask you to now mute your Zoom box, and we will have a speaker this afternoon, and you will be asked to send your questions to him via the chat function here on Zoom. So welcome all. I enjoyed time talking to you before the meeting got started, and everyone looks well and in good spirits.
I've lost my picture.
You've lost your picture?
Yeah.
Does everyone, maybe you push the button for the video.
Pam? Where is your, what happened to the picture?
I'm listening to my Rotary meeting. Yeah, okay.
I don't have my speaker view.
Well, because they're sharing the screen.
Thank you to the Rotary Action Committee and Carl Salas for giving us this video. And given that we have this, I would like to have Kathleen Wright say a few words.
Thank you, President Karen. This is a poem, as you saw, by Harun Rashid of India, and he started it on December 31st, 2019, and enlarged it over the course of the coronavirus getting larger. But I think it also speaks to us about our climate crisis, and it's a great segue into our Rotary Climate Action Committee, which was initiated by Rod Dearden, who has 49 years in Rotary this year, and our co-chair, Deanna Persai. Right now we have a great PowerPoint put together, and we have rolled it out to a number of different organizations and audiences. It has been in the rounds to local Rotaries. We've gotten the approval of our district Rotary governor, and we've also got Rotary International interested in this project. So there's been formed an environmental sustainability Rotary action group. Our goal is to take this PowerPoint on the road, and we wanted to bring it to community groups, neighborhood associations, student groups and middle and elementary schoolers, faith communities and nonprofit members, anybody who could be interested in this, and we really all should be interested in it, because we need to pay attention and now to what are the solutions necessary to engage all of the people on the planet to be able to maintain a livable planet. We're having 3 training sessions starting June 1st, and I would like to encourage every single one of you to sign up to be a presenter. We may not use you all, but it'd be great if everyone could actually walk through the presentation with us. We will prepare you so you can answer questions. We will go over the FAQs with you, and we will never send you out being unprepared. You'll go out with one of us the very first time. So be the Greta Thunberg on your block and in your neighborhood. And as Rotarians, we have a special place in our community, and people respect us when we come out to speak with them. So again, I am Kathleen Wright. Our world depends on all of us participating in this effort, and we have 12 years.
We have no audio.
Kathleen, you muted yourself, Kathleen.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I was busy gesturing, but trying to do it below the screen. We have 12 years to start making a difference, and to paraphrase Harun Rashid, our Earth will not fail to remind us that we are her guests, not her masters. You can raise your hand here, and I will write down your name, or you can email me. My information is in our Rotary Guide, and I'd love to have you come join our group and our training. Thanks.
Thanks, Kathleen. And I think that most people will not be raising their hands because I'm about to do a screen share here. So thank you very much. And I appreciate everyone being muted. And I'm happy to announce that we are going to have our gala on June 20th. You're going to be invited to participate. It's our first ever virtual gala where black tie is mandatory, but pants are optional. The gala will start on June 13th, and the silent auction will open. Raffle tickets will be on sale, and that silent auction will be open for about a week.
Yeah, we'll hear it now. Okay. You can either put it on, what I would do is unmute.
And I want to give a shout out to our sponsors who are staying with us. And we will be thanking them between now and June 20th for their amazing support. And of course, number one for us always is Comerica Bank. We have Oracle and Republic Services helping us, Valet Custom Cabinets and Closets, Block Construction, Ball Trust, Salis O'Brien, Urban Catalyst, Tunis Sketter, Silker Orchards, Heritage Bank, Hogue Fenton, Hopkins Carley, the law offices of Timothy Gill, Mission Valley Truck, Ford, Bizzuto Insurance, Lexus of Stevens Creek, Miller Morton and Callett Law Firm, California Sports Center, Mike Borer, who's also done our graphics, creative director, Samaritan Medical Care Center, Dugain Family Trust, Sandy and Richard Conniff, Willoughby Stewart and Benning and Cook Law Firm, Acosta Sheet Metal, Larry and Carmen Stone, and the Sinanu Towery family. Thank you to all of you, and we have more announcements about our gala, but I think we're going to make it a lot of fun on June 20th. Now, we had a email bonus click about the play garden this week, and it was a faulty click. It had the dry run that the committee was doing. So that has come down, and the improved click will be available for you next week. So our apologies for that. But congratulations to Rotary, to all of you, because this Saturday, May 23rd, is the 5-year anniversary of the grand opening of our fabulous play garden. And since that grand opening in the last 5 years, we have had approximately 760,000 visitors. It's just an amazing space for children of all abilities in our community. So congratulations, Rotary. It's that special time for the Rotometer. At the beginning of the year, I was hoping that we would have 8,000 hours of volunteer work, and we are almost there, way ahead of schedule. I want to remind you before Bonnie Bamberg comes on to read the Rotometer hours, that Rotary Club has responded to COVID-19 in the community and will continue to do so. We have given to local artists, Loaves and Fishes, Silicon Valley Strong, Recovery Cafe, and Good Karma Bikes. And a special shout out to that disaster relief committee that is currently working on possibilities for another project. Bonnie, can you unmute yourself and give us a report on committees that reported in this last month? And I'm not hearing, Bonnie, can you unmute? Okay, so I'm gonna go forward and hope that she joins us in a minute. This is really easy to run these Zoom meetings. Hey, we wanna know, what are Rotarians up to? Well, front page of the Mercury this week, Randy Zeckman was featured. And the line was how one small business came back from the brink. And I must have received 20 emails telling me about this article. And congratulations to Randy. Clean Solar is doing so well under your leadership. And what you've done to make your company vibrant is very admirable. So congratulations, Randy. We love seeing you on the front page above the fold. A speedy recovery and well wishes to Bob Keeve. Just as the meeting started, Rod Deardon told me that Bob is home now and he is recovering well, and we look forward to seeing him at a Zoom meeting. We also heard right before the meeting started that Shelley McNamara is doing very well. Okay, here's our beloved golf committee. And we all know the secret of the golf committee. They love the 19th hole. So here they are having their most recent meeting. And again, it seems like they're at the 19th hole. So golf committee, we love you all. And we love the fact that you have fun no matter what the circumstances. Well, congratulations to Doug Smith. Look at his adorable baby, born on 5/5 Cinco de Mayo, 7.5 pounds. Fabulous. I don't know if she's going to be a whiskey lover, but she is adorable. Doug, thanks for sending us her picture. Now, the Culinary and Hospitality Committee recently had a meeting, and they sang happy birthday to Elaine Sullivan. I happened to be at that meeting, and no one was in sync, but I think Elaine had a really great birthday. So Culinary and Hospitality is planning all sorts of activities when we can get back together. Now, last week's Mystery Rotarian was Dave Cohen with his wife, and we had two people who identified Dave, and that's Chris DeSalvo and Ed Carrillo, and they both won Rotary hats. So here is this week's Mystery Rotarian, and please email me or text me if you know who it is, and you will win a Rotary hat. And also, I would love to see any picture of you in your mask so you could be the Mystery Rotarian of the week. Now, we know that Stu Gantz loves his vacuuming, and this is Stu's grandson. I just got my hands on this picture. So Stu is teaching his grandson, I guess it's a family tradition, they can both come to the Summit Center soon and get us ready for a meeting. I think we'd really like that, Stu. And I have evidence here that Joe Sweeney may be taking ballet lessons, because at the California Sports Center, they found the blue badge in the ballet room. So this to me is circumstantial evidence that Joe Sweeney is a ballet dancer. So I would now like to have Stu Gantz unmute so that we can, so that he can introduce our speaker today. How's that going?
I'm here.
Okay, Stu,
Are you ready?
we're ready for you.
Okay. Thanks, President Karen. It was the 14th of December, 2018, when I first heard Timothy Camus speak.
What's that?
He was the keynote speaker at our son's master's graduation ceremony at California University of Pennsylvania, a public university located in, yes, California, Pennsylvania, just outside of Pittsburgh. Tim was a graduate himself of Cal U, and after his address, I turned to Barbara and said, this guy would be a great program speaker at Rotary. Well, as I found out quickly, the odds of Tim, now retired, traveling to the West Coast were slim to none. But wait, enter the world of Zoom. Thanks to the suggestion of Program Committee Chair Steve Ellenberg, I recontacted Tim, and he said he would be honored to address our club. So live from Pittsburgh, talking about leading the investigation of the largest IRS impersonation scam in our nation's history, here is Timothy Camus.
Tim,
Thank you, Sue.
are you with us, Tim? I have a little PSA I'd like to run. Is that okay?
Sure. Please.
The IRS is calling me? Is this for real?
Fraud is real. Hang up on fraud. Americans have lost more than $23 million by giving out information and money to criminals impersonating the Internal Revenue Service. Scammers are aggressive when they contact a potential victim and claim to be from the IRS. They often use a fake telephone number with a U.S. area code. They demand immediate payment. They may even threaten police arrest or deportation. Don't believe them. Instead, just hang up. Don't provide any information to these crooks. The real IRS will generally first make contact by letter and will never demand immediate payment or threaten force. If you suspect you've been contacted by an IRS scammer, submit an incident report with the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration at www.tigda.gov. Call the TIGDA hotline at 1-800-366-4484. Please share this message.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you. It's really an honor to be here today. And Stu's story is a funny one. California University of Pennsylvania is quite a place. And the fact that Stu happened to be there at his son's commencement, and he happened to see my address, it was, and he's kept in touch. As you all know, he's quite a guy. But, you know, he asked me to talk about a very serious issue that I spent the last 4 years of my career working on, and that was the IRS impersonation scam. At the time I recorded that PSA, and still true today, it was the largest, most pervasive telemarketing scam in the history of the Internal Revenue Service. And just to give you some numbers, and it still is, it remains today, although it's slowed down quite a bit. To date, 2.5 million complaints were filed with my former agency. Of those, 15,800 people actually paid close to $80 million in fraud. And as a result of numerous investigations conducted by my agency with the help of other law enforcement agencies, 170 individuals have been either arrested or prosecuted, along with the indictment of 5 call centers located in India. It just so happened that the real California was one of the hardest hit states, accounting for as much as $16 million of that fraud. So $16 million came from the state of California. Generally, it was targeted at the elderly or people who may have reason to fear the Internal Revenue Service. I want to tell you a real life story that happened. It was really heartbreaking about this scam. It was about a man in Florida. It was a Friday afternoon in Washington, D.C., typical end of a Friday. I'd just come out of my 5th meeting, and I was headed back to my office, and my tail was dragging pretty low. And I heard the phone in my office was ringing. I answered it, and it was a senior staffer from the Senate Special Committee on Aging. And he said, "Tim, we really need your help. You know, we just got this complaint from a constituent in Florida. He has just been victimized by the IRS scam. Is there anything you guys can do?" So because it was a fresh crime, I scrambled a couple of our agents from Fort Lauderdale over to immediately interview him. We got all the information from him. And as I were talking to him, they learned this really sad story. He was so intimidated and frightened by the call. They were threatening to arrest him, leave his wife. You know, he was an elderly gentleman. She was going to be all by herself. They were going to take all of his money. They were going to seize his car. They were claiming to be the Internal Revenue Service. He was so upset, he got in his car. He started to drive toward the Walmart to get some debit cards so he could send them the money. And on his way, he crashed his car. But he was so focused on doing what they wanted because he thought it was the IRS and all these things were going to happen. He just abandoned his car, and he walked the rest of the way to Walmart. He purchased the gift cards. He called the scammers back, and he gave them the numbers on the back of the card so they could convert it into money, and that's how it worked. And then he started to walk home. When he walked back to his car, he could see there were police cars, and his wife was there crying. They didn't know what happened. His car was wrecked on the side of the road. There was no sign of him. And he told the police what happened, and then the wheels started to turn. But, you know, that story is just so heartbreaking because here's just this older guy minding his own business, doing the right thing, and he gets a call from scammers, and he's driven into action to the point where he wrecks his car and abandons it. But it was heartbreaking. The good news of that story is because we were alerted so early on, we were able to track the money. It was actually up to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And within about a month, we arrested the individuals responsible for this and held them accountable. But it's just, you know, stories like this were pervasive throughout this, with 15,800 victims paying these scammers $80 million, you can imagine. Because it's, you know, it's not just about the money. And it was never about the money for us. These people were ruining people's lives. They were stealing their life savings. And in many cases, they were actually making it so that our seniors couldn't even live independently because they would lose everything they ever saved. And it was just, you know, heartbreaking, but it made it, for us, it made it very worthwhile investigating these crimes. In another case, a family member called us and said, "Hey, look, you know, you guys are doing a good job, but we just want to let you know that our family fell victim to this." You know, an elderly member, I think it was a grandfather, had been scammed out of several $1,000s, and he was so upset that he went out into his garage and killed himself. So, I mean, it had horrible consequences. And even, you know, I received the calls myself at home and on my cell phone. And the more we got into the case and the more we put out public information trying to warn people, they kind of got onto who I was and what I was about. And I think they turned up the volume of my calls. I'm sure many of you received these types of calls. There were over 2.5 million calls that were logged. And so I'm sure that many of you received these types of calls yourselves. So through all this work, you know, 170 cases, we arrested a bunch of people, we indicted call centers. The number of calls on the IRS scam has decreased. However, it still hasn't gone away. And the problem is that for these telemarketers, these robocallers, and these scammers, all they need to do is get one victim. It's such a cheap crime. They use voice over internet to make these calls basically for free. Some of them are located in legitimate call centers, so they even have the telemarketing backstopping that they need. So it doesn't cost them anything to do it. If they get one victim, then they're way ahead. So they're going to continue to do this. And the only thing that will make it stop is when people realize that they're being victimized and they don't pay them any money. Early on in the COVID-19 outbreak, the scammers started calling and telling victims, "Look, you know, you need to get in touch with us. We're the Internal Revenue Service. If you want your stimulus payment, you need to contact us. They were also using other government loan programs as a guise to get people to call them back. But fortunately, with social distancing and quarantine, it even impacted the call centers. So many of you may have seen a drop in the number of spam calls that you're getting on your own. And it's kind of interesting that something that impacts legitimate business also impacts criminal enterprises. My fear, though, is as things start to open up, these spam calls are going to continue to come in, and I think they're even going to be more aggressive, trying to con people out of money under the guise of some sort of a stimulus as a result of COVID-19. So good news, it's slowed down. Bad news, I'm afraid it's going to ramp back up again. The scammers continue to change. You know, they will use different scripts. They will use different approaches. When the impersonation scams first came on our radar in 2013, the main way that they had victims pay was using Green Dot debit cards. So we started working heavily with Green Dot. Green Dot put some security in place. So then the scammers shifted, and you wouldn't believe where they went next. It was iTunes gift cards. So think about this for 1 second. 80% of the $80 million was iTunes gift cards. The state of somebody's mind, if you can convince them and scare them and intimidate them to go to a store and buy multiple iTunes gift cards to pay their federal taxes. Just imagine how harangued people are, and it's just not a reasonable thing to do. However, as I said, we're aware of at least 15,800 people that did that. The number of victims is probably much higher, but due to embarrassment and not really reporting it, we probably haven't heard all of it, but it's still, you can just imagine what it's like. And like I said, many of you probably got calls, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. So they shifted, you know, they'll move from one platform to another. As we get better at detecting and stopping them, they'll move around. But, you know, I was really proud of my agency, and I want to just take a second about telling you how people in federal law enforcement work for you as a taxpayer. We didn't just sit back and watch this happen. I mean, we were constantly challenging ourselves, and we were trying to protect America. So we updated our website. We did the PSAs, the one you saw. We did multiple PSAs, multiple news interviews on nightly news, local news, newspapers. Any way we could try to get the word out, we did. One of my executives identified that there was a federal robocall task force. So he worked his way into that meeting. And through working with them, we were able to determine that when the criminals were spoofing telephone numbers to make it look like it was the Internal Revenue Service, 202, 622, so on caller ID, it would look like the IRS. We found out that they could see that network traffic coming in offshore, and they were willing to block those numbers. So they blocked like 2 million of those phone calls before they even came in. So you think about that and you say, well, how many victims were saved by blocking those calls before they could even come in? And I think that was really great by my team. But my favorite one was this thing called advise and disrupt strategy. We thought about it and we said, look, we're getting all these reports from 2 million people that they're getting robocalls that basically say, hey, you have to call us back at this telephone number or these horrible things are going to happen to you. Well, after a while, we were able to manage the data and look for common phone numbers. And where we identified big blocks of using the same callback number, we worked with the carriers to take those down. But before they could take them down, we also put our own robocaller on those phone numbers. So in essence, we were jamming them with a message from me telling them to stop it, so that if innocent victims had tried to call back, they'd probably get a busy signal. I mean, that was just one of my favorite because we kind of turned the game around on them. We worked hard with the FTC, Apple, Walmart, MoneyGram, Green Dot to help put warnings out so that if a potential victim went up to buy one of these cards, they'd be warned, you know, look, there's a scam going on and you're being told to buy these instruments to pay your taxes. If you've been told to buy an iTunes card to pay your taxes, don't do it. It's a scam. So we were hopeful that that would change. And then one of the things that we really had to do differently was we had to look differently at how law enforcement approaches things. Usually the law enforcement approach is no comment, right? You've seen it on the news hundreds of times. We said, you know what, that's not good enough. Well, we can't just sit there and say no comment while we're running a 3-year investigation on an international case. So we continue to go out in the public. We continue to go to the media. We continue to go up on the Hill and testify. And we continue to try to make the information available to everybody rather than just sit back and wait. More victims, more victims. We aggressively got out in front of it. Our motto was, for each potential victim, if one victim is protected, that was a victory for us. Because we saw, it would be a senior person who was unable to live by themselves because all their money had been taken. So I was very, very proud of the agency. I was proud of the other law enforcement agencies that we worked with. And I thought we made a difference, I think. But the most difficult thing was getting the message out. It's imperative that we don't let our guard down because, like I said earlier, it will continue. A good example of that is, although we made inroads on the IRS scam, how many of you have received a call from Social Security Administration telling you that either your benefits would be stopped or there's something wrong with your account and you need to call back right away? Well, as our old friends, but because we were quasi-successful in getting them to stop the IRS calls, they just went to the next huge government agency that touches most Americans, which is Social Security. And I know that I was getting those calls myself as well. They've also slowed down right now, but I'm afraid they're going to come back. But the key here is they will continue to try and they will continue to change. If they can look for any particular advantage at all, they're going to keep trying for it as long as they get a victim. I just want to spend a minute with you because I have a couple minutes left. I want to spend a minute with you just giving you I know I have some really, really bright people on here who are IT experts and security experts. But for everybody else, I just want to take a minute to give you some tips on how you can protect yourself. So for those of you that are in the industry that do this every day and help people, I apologize, but for everybody else, here are some tips. Consider spam blocking, spam call blocking applications. I happen to have Verizon on my cell phone, and they now are implementing programs where I can see when the phone rings that it's probable spam, so I know not even to answer it. But there are other apps that are available in the app stores that have varying degrees of success on spam blocking and call blocking. So consider those. Do not participate in online quizzes, especially whenever they're just out in the open. If you're on Facebook and it says, hey, here's a fun quiz, take this quiz. Where did you go to high school? What was your favorite teacher's name? What kind of a dog was your first dog? It seems very innocent. It's fun to play that game. However, a lot of the questions that are asked are actually questions that you use as challenge questions that may authenticate your identity to a bank or other people. So it's a trick to get you to play along and provide information that is probably an answer that you might use to a challenge question. Be very careful where you post your public resume. One of the victims, I used to tell my staff every once in a while, I'd say, all right, it's Thursday. I got these silly meetings out of the way. If anybody calls about the scam, put them through. I want to hear what's really going on out there. I want to talk to people. And this lady called and she was very upset. She had just been scammed. And she said, sir, I knew it was the IRS. And I said, okay, tell me about it. How did you know that it was the IRS? She said, well, they knew where I'd worked. They knew what kind of business I was in. They knew when I graduated from high school. I just knew it was the IRS. And I said, okay, the IRS knows a lot of stuff, but that sounds really specific. I said, let me ask you a question. Have you recently applied for a job online? And she said, yes, I did. And I said, well, that's part of where they get some of this information. Whenever you apply for a job online, be very, very careful where you apply. And if you post your resume in a public domain, just be alert to the fact that some of that information gets sold. And that may actually be used either to try to trick you or actually to try to steal your identity. So be very careful with your resume. If you receive a spam call, and it's a live person, just hang up the phone or if they have a callback number for you, don't call back. A lot of people have fun playing with these people, but the best thing to do is just don't mess with them, because it can become more of a problem and they could harass you even more. And the final thing I'd like to just recommend to you is, if you get something and it doesn't feel right or sound right, before you give any money or personal information, a legitimate entity, government entity, or anybody else would be fine if you said, I need to call you back. Take the time and then go talk to somebody, talk to a family member, a friend, somebody else, and say, hey, I got this call and it sounded kind of weird. Before I provide them with any information, what do you think of that? Perfect example is there's a scam going on right now where out of the blue you get an email and it said, hey, I have your password. And it will even have your password in the email. It's usually an old password that the criminals have obtained from the dark web, which is a place where criminals go to share identity information that have been stolen. And it really scares you because it shakes you, because you see that it is actually a password that you may have used at one time. And then the email goes on to try to extort money from you in exchange for, telling people everything that's on your computer, or stealing all the data off your computer and doing further crimes. And so it's been going around. I got one of those, but out of the blue, my brother called me and said, hey, I just got this really weird email and they had a password of mine. So like I said, as a speed bump to this and try to protect yourself, take time to check with people. Have you heard about this? Has this happened to you? Or go on Google and just type in a description of what's going on. And you'll be surprised that oftentimes it in fact is a scam or a new scam. But in my time today, I just wanted to share that story with you and spend a little bit of time with you. And like Stu said, I was honored and flattered that he asked me to present to Rotary. So appreciate your time today. And I hope that some of this information might be interesting to you. And I believe I have a little bit of time for questions, but that's up to Karen.
Yeah, I do. We have some questions have come in.
Okay.
So first of all, we're all concerned about the original story you told about the man who was in the car crash. Did he eventually have his money returned to him?
We got some money back. I'm not sure. I didn't follow up on his specific case, but we worked with the Department of Justice and have a victim compensation fund. So as a result of some of the prosecutions, any money that we were able to recover went into that fund. I could tell you he probably didn't get 100% of his money back, but there is a chance he got some of it back.
Here's a question for you. Why doesn't the IRS put warnings on all of their forms?
Yeah, that's a good question. They were really trying to work hard, and they were like us. They were trying to figure out a way, how do we get the word out? And so they did some PSAs and things like that. But the type of fraud that this was, it was a telephone call out of the blue from a criminal that's basically said, hey, you've got this IRS issue that you need to take care of. So the whole thing wasn't true. But if you went to irs.gov, you would see that they had done quite a bit. And they update fraud alerts from time to time. And I think if you go to irs.gov today, you would see they even put warnings in there about the COVID type fraud.
Now, do you think people are at risk? You're talking about scammers getting private information. LinkedIn has resume information. Do you have any advice about that, the things that are posted on LinkedIn?
I think LinkedIn is a secure platform, but it's just what I would tell anybody that asks the question. Anytime you put any of your information out in a public domain, whether it's in a secure platform, just be careful and assume that there's a chance that if they're not, they could be hacked, right? They could be hacked, or that information somehow could end up spilling out into the public. So I generally don't ever provide very specific information that I'm not aware that I provide, if that makes sense.
Yeah. One of our Rotarians asked, if I'm connected to friends that play games online, is my information at risk? Am I exposed? And this would be via Facebook.
Yeah, it's possible that if you get into the games that, where somebody said, hey, here's an album. What's your favorite album? That stuff is pretty harmless. But I would just say if you get involved in any type of situation where it starts to get really personal, really personal about you, just be guarded with what you put in there. And, just assume that, hey, somewhere down the road, this could be used for negative purposes.
Is it fair to say that all the little warnings you've given us today about securing your personal information, that applies to all sorts of scams, not just IRS scams, right?
That's right. That's right. As I said, the scammers that were responsible for the IRS scam, they were also doing the IT repair scam. And that one worked by, where you'd be online and either you'd get an email or a pop-up would come in and said basically, hey, your software is, out of date or it needs fixed, contact us right away. The victim would contact right away and then say, okay, we just need access to your computer. Here, click on this link, give us access, and we'll work behind the scenes like a legitimate IT help desk situation. Meanwhile, they were stealing all the information out of the computer, or they would use it as ransom. So the scams are, a lot of times, multiple scams are done by the same people, and they could be vastly different. So, you just got to be careful. The bottom line to all of it is, there are people out there that are looking to take advantage of people, and they're looking to use information or scare tactics on multiple fronts. We were successful to a degree with IRS, protecting the brand of IRS. So you probably noted you hadn't been getting many spam calls or robocalls about the IRS. But then they went to the Social Security, right?
That's a call-in user taking over. So there's discussion online right now among the Rotarians about Green Dot. Could you explain that to everyone for people who aren't looking at the chat talk here?
Yeah, sure.
Some people don't know what Green Dot is.
Yeah, Green Dot is a commercial debit card that's reloadable, which means you buy it one time and you're able to just continue to add money to it. Actually, the government several years ago was using Green Dot to issue refunds and payments, Social Security payments. So the key to the debit card and even the iTunes card, the Green Dot card and the iTunes card, was the criminal didn't need the card itself to monetize it, which is to change it into money. All they needed were the digits on the back. So that made that was a method of the crime, was they convinced the victim to buy a reloadable debit card like Green Dot. So the victim would go buy, $1,000 on a Green Dot card, and it'd say, okay, what are the digits on the back of the card? Once the criminals had those, then they were able to go buy additional Green Dot cards or money orders with that information. And iTunes kind of worked the same way. So
here's a question that I don't understand. Maybe you will. Are the YouTube guys who do a reverse burn on these scammers legit? They seem to be very entertaining. So maybe you can explain the question and then give us an answer.
Yeah. There are people that have a lot of fun. They if they get a robocall and it says, this is IRS, you got to call back immediately, or horrible things are going to happen to you. Here's a telephone number. Well, there are people out there just for sport. They will call the number back and they will mess with them. They'll keep them on the phone. They'll make, they'll say ridiculous, silly things, and they'll video all of it just for fun. And they are funny. I admit it. The problem with that, though, is if you make the scammers angry at you and by calling them back and making fools of them, they might get angry at you. They could focus on your phone numbers and continue to harass you. That's why, although it's funny to see some of those videos on YouTube about making, having fun with the spammers, I always tell people, look, just don't even mess with them. Get them out of your life. Hang up the phone. Don't call them back, because they'll move on to somebody else who they think they can get money from. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I hope, Jeffrey Hare, that answers your question because that is the craziest. I never even heard of that. Leave it to Jeff Hare. Thank you. Well, I think that's all our questions. I have one myself, though. Your handle down here is Tin Can Captain. Can you explain that?
I can. This is a great story. So when Stu talked to me about doing this via Zoom, my laptop is really old. So I had to go to my son and borrow his laptop so I could present today. And that's I wish I had a better story, but my son that's his nickname, Tin Can Captain. So that's him.
Fabulous.
Good catch on that one.
Well, thank you very much for coming to San Jose today via Zoom. And we've enjoyed hearing you talk. And we've given a donation to San Jose Jazz locally in honor of all our speakers. So thank you very much. And we hope you stay safe and well.
Thank you so much. It has been an honor and a pleasure. Good day to all of you.
Thank you. So that will conclude our meeting today. I'm sorry we didn't hear from Bonnie Bamberg, but we will have her next week. I will give you a preview that we have 7,560 hours, volunteer hours, for our club this Rotary year. So thank you very much for joining us. And I look forward to seeing you next week on our at our Zoom meeting. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Thanks.
Have a great day. See you
Bye,
Wednesday.
everybody.
Bye.
Everybody stay safe.